Welcome to High Octane Leadership with Donald Thompson. This season, we're diving deeper with more solo episodes, where I'll share the experiences that have led to recognition by EY, Forbes, Fast Company, and others. Not as a boast, but as milestones on my entrepreneurial path. From growing multi-million-dollar firms to successful business exits and building high-performance teams with a global perspective. I'll reveal the insights and strategies from my journey and share them with you so that we can win together. Alongside these solo episodes, we'll have industry visionaries and thought leaders, and we'll explore effective leadership. Ready to empower your leadership journey with real success stories? Let's embark on this transformational journey together. Hello, my name is Donald Thompson, and welcome to another episode of High Octane Leadership. I'm really excited about today's topic as we talk about Gen Z in the workplace. There's a lot of information going on around, is Gen Z lazy? Are they committed to work? Are they just excited about experiences, quiet quitting? All the different things that talk about a generation as a monolithic group. And my guest today, Diana Garland, is a new professional, just recently graduating from school. And we're going to chop it up and talk about Gen Z in the workplace. And so, Diana, before we get into kind of the overall topic, I want you to take a minute and just introduce yourself to our audience. Tell them a little bit about your background personally, where you went to school, where you work professionally, and then that'll allow the audience to get to know you, and then we'll dive into our topic.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Diana Garland. I work at a company called Vaco. They're a global staffing and recruitment company. They have managed services, talent services, and they focus mainly on HR, accounting, and finance. So I am a recent graduate of UNC-Charlotte. Graduated 2024 with a marketing degree and had a great experience there. During my time at UNC-Charlotte, I worked for the diversity movement as an intern, so I had a great time there. And then I was later promoted to a part-time role as a social media strategist. So personally, I really love to travel. I love spending time with my family and friends, and I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So
Good
a few
stuff.
things about me.
That is a wonderful introduction. Now, your first professional kind of full-time job, different things of that nature. So you're moving from that academic environment to that real world work environment. And as we talked about before the actual show, there's a lot of bias around Gen Z in the workplace. And to be even more specific, right, Diana and I were talking and catching up, and she was like, I'm tired of these other generations picking on Gen Z. We're not all lazy. We're not all unfocused, and we got to do something about this. I said, well, I have a platform. Let's talk about this. So here's the question, right? What are some of the things? We'll start kind of with the positive, and then we'll dispute maybe some myths and chop it up. I don't know if they're all myths, so it's going to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, some of it.
Good discussion.
Yeah, we'll have a good discussion. What do Gen Zers look for in today's work environment?
That is a great question. I think when it comes to Gen Z and what we are looking for in the workplace, we're very focused and purpose-driven. So we look for a great culture, but we also look for a company and an organization that we want to be behind, that aligns with our values. I think we also look at the team aspect, and if they're motivated, if they're working hard and they're passionate about what they do, then why wouldn't I be as well? So aligning with values and being purpose-driven is very important. I think having a solid team as well, just being able to be open, ask questions with anybody on the team, even if that's leadership or someone on the same level as you, super important. I think in college, one of the biggest realizations I had is that they don't teach you how to work at all. I think it was very shocking. So I learned a lot of basic concepts when it came to marketing, but how to work hard. I think time management was a skill learned just because I had a lot going on in college. But when I got into the workforce, I was very surprised. Not that I wasn't eager to learn so I can be in that workplace, that workflow, but at the same time, it was a shock. So being able to ask those questions, not being nervous about asking those questions, and having mentorship, Very important aspect, just to be able to ask those questions, just to be able to sit down, make sure I'm on track to doing what I'm supposed to do and benefit the team.
One of the things that I have, and I appreciate that answer very much, one of the benefits I have is I know the company that you work for and happen to know several of the leaders that you partner with, right? So talk about your experience, right, at Vaco, being a part of Gen Z, but also being introduced to $1 billion business. Mm-hmm. So how's that onboarding been? What are some of the things that those leaders have done successfully so you can be productive right out of the gate?
Yeah. I will say, and this may sound biased just because I'm working there, but shout out Vaco, shout out Josh Heyman.
There you go.
But I think one of the biggest things that they did was listen to my questions. I think they knew that I was a younger professional. They knew that I'm not going to be as experienced as somebody that's, been in the game for 10 plus years when it comes to marketing. But understanding that and being available to answer those questions, wanting me to do better so I can, drive those results that they're looking for, being able to take some time to have those performance reviews outside of just checking a box. With my boss, Josh, we constantly have that open environment where I can just reach out. He'll sit at the desk like across from me and I'm just like, Josh, can I borrow you for 5 minutes? I just need to run a quick thought or question by you. I think that's super important just so we stay aligned in our values and what our goals are, because essentially, Gen Z, all generations have similar goals when it comes to being successful, when it comes to making sure that the organization is successful. I think that barrier comes in when we don't ask those questions, but also when, Gen X or any generation doesn't want to sit down to answer those questions. I'm getting off track here.
No, I think it's a great answer. And I'm very fortunate in that I've been a strategic partner with Vaco. Josh Heyman is somebody that I admire. And one of the things that I know about Josh is he's results driven.
Very.
Right. So, he runs the #1 office in Vaco. He's one of the top producers year after year in his space. He is very well thought of as an executive. He's super busy. Right. So to slow down to answer questions is not just the time invested in the questions you have, but then the opportunity cost of other things that he's doing. And so I think that your answer kind of leads me to a responsibility of what is good leadership hygiene. Mm. And we have to, as leaders, anytime you say Gen Z is this or millennials are this, as a leader, you're absolving responsibility, right, that you have to bring out the best in all your people, independent of their background, their age, their perspective, and all those things. Mm-hmm. And so I think you're very fortunate in having a leader that has been willing to do that and a company that supports that. I think very strongly that leadership responsibility is about relationship, and that we have a high standard for performance, and I do in my companies, but we also have a high standard that an executive's role is to help you be in a position to win, and that's a two-way street. And so that slowing down to answer those questions is something I had to learn as a leader. I had to have that called out. I had to have some retention issues before I understood, wait a minute, I can't talk to Jamie the same way I talk to Joe, the same way I talk to Felicia, the same way I talk to Al, right? I have to take into consideration that people learn different, but we can still get to that same standard. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is really important. What is one of the things that, let's get a little specific on the college piece, not learning how to work. What are some of the things you wish you knew coming out of school that were a little bit more shocking coming into the corporate environment?
I think just touching on what I had mentioned earlier with not understanding how to work, there are basic things that we're not taught, whether that's, what are your benefits? When it comes to taxes, what do I need to do? What do these words mean, really? I remember sitting down with you all and just saying, I don't know what any of this means. I was not taught this in college. So I think from a broader perspective, like just those types of things. And then working, I think college and what I had learned in school in general, from high school because of COVID and going into college, I think COVID was a very strong turn point for how Gen Z in the workplace had to adapt. I think one of the biggest things about Gen Z is how adaptable we are. We had to go through having everything taken from us. We had to be at home. We weren't able to, have an option to turn in those assignments whenever we wanted to. I think it's important that we focus on the fact that even though we have been faced with that adversity, we still had to turn in the work. We still had to do the work. So just focusing on that adaptability point, I think it's very applicable in the workplace. And it's not that, we don't want to work. I don't think that Gen Z rejects hustle. I think that we're trying to redefine it. And I think COVID really helped us learn how to be adaptable in the workplace. But wrapping back to the question, because I like going on tangents with different things like that.
That's fine. We got plenty of digital tape. So it's great. and more batteries. So
for sure. I think understanding, and I know I keep bringing up this topic of questions, but it's really because we don't know. I think understanding how to ask the right questions to get the right answers to ensure that we're aligned is extremely important. Whether that's asking questions and then following up with note taking. These are super basic things that we weren't really taught in college and high school. I think we were just writing down notes to grab all the information that we could. And then we were reaching out to friends and saying, oh, I'm not sure what's going to be on this test. I don't think I wrote it down. I didn't get it. But I think with school, you had more space to mess up and be able to get back. If I were, taking a test and I'm like, I'm definitely going to fail this. Like I'm going to get a 60 on this. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know throughout the semester, I'll be able to come back and still get that A. With work, that is not how it is at all. So you have to really be able to pay attention to what the leaders in the workplace are saying, be able to apply it quickly, and then be able to have that reflect in the work that you're putting in and the deliverables that you have.
Very powerful answer. And one of the things I pulled from it is the difference between school and work is the time pressure. And then when you layer on the time pressure and then the impact of what winning looks like, that's very different, right? It's much more competitive, not as collegial, right? And so in the academic environment, no one really talks to you about how to manage corporate politics, right? How to understand the point of view of your boss and your manager, right? This person is harsh. This person is toxic. This person, all those things. This person has to meet a payroll of 100 people. Like, it doesn't absolve poor behavior of a leader. It's not my point. My point is that we are so conditioned to think about things through our lens that we don't develop the capacity to look at the other's point of view so that you can at least understand why they're behaving what they're behaving. And so if I had a magic wand and got a chance to teach some Gen Zers as they're moving from academic into the workplace, I would talk to them a little bit about the different roles in organizations and what they do, why they matter, and the pressure they're under. And then when you know what someone does, how they're measured, and the pressure they're under, then you can ask more questions that they'll understand from their point of view, number one. And number two, I think there's really kind of this misnomer, right, that we don't work together, that you work just for the boss. If I'm a leader and you're confused, then I'm not getting the value I could from you being here. So your questions are not an imposition. Your questions are actually an opportunity for me to help you do well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's one of the things that we try to teach managers as they're working not just with Gen Z, but different personalities, different backgrounds, different educational levels, different work experiences. And I think that is really, really important. So let's flip gears a little bit. So those are some of the things in terms of the broad Gen Z perspective. But there's some bias you all are working on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Gen Z's lazy. They don't want to work. Quiet quitting. What the hell is that? I remember reading this article on quiet quitting. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, what are we talking about right here? But I'll make this statement and then I'll wrap it into a question. We didn't have all this collaboration, right? A boss told us what we do, we did it. How they told it to us, whether we liked it or not, like, we didn't really get up in arms about that as a culture. Right? That was the boss. I'm the employee. I do what you want me to do. We keep it moving. And I think that in today's business environment, people are much more encouraged and much more comfortable bringing their whole self to work. So they don't camouflage their feelings or their emotions or different things, which is fine. But I don't think that leaders have been trained and educated how to deal with empathy and the economic pressure they're under. And that's where we kind of miss each other. And then on the Gen Z side, right, there is this construct of I won't, and this is my bias coming out. I'm gonna give you space to correct it and educate me, right? I need to feel comfortable. I need to feel seen. I need to feel in good space to do my best work, right? And that mentality is so counter to Gen X because I'm still paying you even if you're not comfortable. Even if you don't feel seen, I'm still paying you the same money we agreed. And so there's this butting of heads in perspective of what is the relationship that you have with work. And so I'd like some of your thoughts on the Gen Z lazy, what managers should be learning, right? And why do you think that perception is there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should focus on Gen Z's focus being more about intentionality, not apathy. I think that's really impactful. I also want to mention we're really trying to bridge that gap. I think we have a lot of similarities in goals that we want to achieve. And I think another thing that we could bring up is how did we get to be the way that we are?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, right.
You didn't raise yourself?
Yeah,
is that what
exactly.
you're saying?
I'm saying I didn't raise myself. Gen X did raise Gen Z. So, we went into how Gen Z was raised and how, you all had commercials come on at 10 o'clock saying, oh, do you know where your kids are? But, we were riding scooters with helmets and knee pads, right? So there was a layer of protection that was added from specific things that you all went through as Gen X. So how you were and how tough you were in the workplace was reflected on how you were raised. How I was raised was when those street lights came on, it's time for you to be inside. I know where you're at, I think that's very different. So I think that as we evolved in how we were as people over time, it was very seen in the workplace and how we are. Now, I do think that we do have a lot of passion and we're very purpose driven when it comes to workplace culture because we want to chase after something that aligns with our values. And I know that there were a couple of statistics, and don't mind me bringing out these note cards, but I want to make sure that I get these right. But 83% of Gen Z wants a job where they feel like their work is meaningful. And also 49% of Gen Z, just to try to bridge this gap, right? 49% of Gen Z say that work is central to their identity. And I think that's important because, as you mentioned, when it came to Gen X, they were, if a boss said something to them that they didn't like, they're not expressing it. They're keeping their head down. Mm-hmm. They're getting in those hours and they're getting out of there. And they're doing the same thing to save up for what they wanted to do. But they weren't focused on that, that culture or how you were feeling, being able to express that. And that's reflected in the way that we were raised. But also, I think it really strengthens teams. It provides an opportunity, to say we're not fitting in that all category. There are a lot of people, and just like that 49%, they feel like, work is central to their identity. And that's a similarity that we don't talk about. And right. It is something that we should focus on because if that 49%, which is almost half of us, is in your workplace, there are more similarities than we think.
Anytime we try to categorize a group of people, we're automatically wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's so much variance to who we are collectively, who we are individually, and I think it's lazy, right? And even though I still do it and have to fight it, I at least understand it when I'm playing it in my mind to myself, right? That I wouldn't want someone else, or I don't like when someone else puts me in a box or different things. One of the differences that I see, and I'll use this, and I have the very good fortune of dealing with folks of all different generations globally, right? And that gives me a lot of examples to pull from. And so one of the things in terms of how we raised our young people is we didn't teach, I don't think, this is my opinion, on how to take strong feedback. Mm-hmm. And that weakness has then done two things. Number one, it creates a more allergic reaction in young people when they get feedback that their performance isn't at a high level. But then when that, and I'll give an example in my experience in a minute, but then when that feedback is not taken in that direction, The leader, instead of figuring out the best way to give that employee feedback, stops giving as much feedback. Nobody's winning in that scenario, right? Because what's happening now is there's a lot of people that are being laid off, a lot of people that are in job transitions that thought they were doing amazing at their job, but they were really a B or C player because their leader, when talent was scarce, was not giving them any coaching. Pat on the back. Oh man, that's a great job. Pat on the back. Yep. Even if they didn't love it. But then when the finances of the business constrained, then the true value of whether somebody was an A, B, or C player came out. And I don't think that's fair. I think your job as a leader is to let people know where they stand, how they can improve. If they do it or don't, that's up to them. But we should tell them. I remember, this was maybe 2 years ago, and I didn't love this. I don't think I handled it right, but I'll use it as an example, but I learned from it. There was 2 Gen Zers, and they presented a marketing presentation to me, and they were super excited about it and spent a lot of time on it. And I didn't love it. I really didn't love it.
Yeah, I get it.
I was thinking, that is, you all could have done nothing for the last 2 weeks, and it'd have been the same as what I saw, right? And I expressed it kind of like that.
Got it.
I was not a happy camper, right? And so what happened, though, because I didn't slow down to express myself in a way that they could understand it, I was a little bit frustrated, right? Because I paid for work that I expected a higher standard from the folks that did it. But what ended up happening is because of my response, my reaction, those 2 individuals lost another week of productivity. They literally, am I going to get fired? How mad is Don at me? I can't believe he said it that way. All this stuff, right? And so now I'm having to unwind that. Well, no, nobody's getting fired. I messed up 10 things worse than that yesterday. Right. I said, so it's not a fireable offense. I just didn't like it. Number 2, right, where are we missing the boat? Because I didn't yell or scream. It was kind of like I said right then, but I wasn't happy. Right. The second thing, however, that I realized is that what is the cost of a bad interaction with someone on your team? And that was the learning thing for me. Did I want to cost 40 hours of productivity versus taking 15 minutes, is what it would have taken, to say, hey, listen, let's walk through this presentation. I don't think we're hitting the mark, but I want to make sure you all understand, 1, how we can address it, 2, that I'm willing to help you address it, and 3, I want your feedback to see if you agree with me or if maybe I have the wrong opinion. Right? I'm fully capable of having that conversation better. But I remember the day, the time pressures and different things, it's not an excuse. I've already described I should have handled it better. But all the different things that were coalescing on that day, that was just the last thing that I wanted to see.
For sure.
So here's my question to you. What can we do to help drive better resilience in our Gen Z employees? Because I do believe strongly that you all have not been set up to take strong feedback. With that as a statement, let's just assume I'm right there for a minute. What can we do to help you all be better, to overcome that, to see it a little bit different?
That's a great question. I think touching on what you had just mentioned, just the fact that you're able to acknowledge that you may not have handled that correctly. You also have to realize, as Gen Z, we need to give space for people to be human. We need to be able to give that space for somebody to have that reaction and understand that if they're having that reaction or speaking to you at all about it instead of just leaving the room, which can happen. If they thought it was total trash and they weren't loving it, they have 30 other things that they need to get done. But the fact that even if it was an angry response, you gave feedback. As Gen Z, we should learn how to accept that feedback and really navigate which parts were meaningful, which parts we should apply, and then be able to give that next thing that we do, whether it's a presentation, anything, it should be able to check the list of the feedback that you had provided. And I think that really helps with bridging the gap. You got angry, but you're understanding that we may work better with a certain reaction, with certain, sit down and just let me know what happened, even if it's not anger. At the same time, Gen Z should be able to give that space for somebody to get angry and still be able to navigate the great feedback that was provided and then push the anger to the side, especially if it's not something that's common. Just going back to your original question, it really is a lead up to that big presentation. So what are we doing in the workplace before I give this presentation that I can sit down with you, even if it's a 15-minute meeting, and really just understand, hey, what are you expecting? I'm presenting this to you and the team this week or next week, right? What are the things that you're looking for in this presentation? So we don't get to that angry, blow up moment, anything. How are we setting these weekly meetings, monthly meetings, bi-weekly to say, I need to understand who my boss is, who my leader is, what their expectations are, so I can align whatever I'm presenting with what their ideals are. And I really think that it's important to have that backing, that, setup, and that happens outside of that final presentation. That happens, with those quick questions that you ask for 2 minutes. That happens in those 15-minute monthly meetings. We're wanting to absorb any knowledge that we can. We want to learn. Gen Z is hungry to learn. I think that we have that emotional kind of, viewpoint on us, which I think that we are in tune with our emotions, but we also prioritize making money. Right. It's tough out there right now. Like, compensation is important, but
it does matter.
We need to be able to align, the work that we're doing with the goals and everything just to make sure that we're aligned as a whole, as a team, and we keep pushing forward from that. So we need to be less sensitive when there's feedback that can be a little bit hard to take, and then grab the points after and set a meeting maybe 30 minutes later, an hour later, the next day, and say, hey, this is what I gathered from what you expressed yesterday. Let me know if I'm on track, so this will never happen again. And I'll give you an example. I mean, I've been working at Vaco for less than 9 months, or around the 9-month mark. We're all going to make mistakes in the workplace. You cannot be perfect.
That's right.
And I think Gen Z does have a fear of messing up, because you feel like it's going to be over if I mess up this one thing. We're very focused on being perfect, and we shouldn't be. So I had set up an event. It was a volunteer event. And what I ended up doing was sending out the wrong address to the entire team. And it was the morning of, and there were a couple of mistakes leading up to that, but I had everything right on the information except for the address, which is a crucial part.
Right.
Right. So everybody's at the other location, the wrong location. And I'm on the phone, I'm trying to figure out like what's going on, everything like that. And I remember I called you, and I'm like, I'm freaking out right now. Like, this is a problem. I have everybody in the wrong place. I don't know what to do. Right. But I can tell you one thing, as a Gen Zer, as a person, I'll never do that again. I will always make sure that I double check, triple check that mistake will never happen again. And it hasn't. So.
That is good stuff. And then also for our listeners, this Gen Z young lady calling me, this is my daughter. So she calls me all the time.
Thanks for the backstory.
Yeah, little backstory.
Yeah.
One of the things that I appreciate about that story, right, is you took the lessons and moved forward. And then you also, that was an opportunity for you to see how your team, how your boss, how your leader handled mistakes. Mm-hmm. Most people assume the boogeyman before giving their leaders an opportunity to see how they handle mistakes, right? And I think that's an important thing that we have to continue to do well, acknowledging it, but also like, how do we dust ourselves off and go again?
Yeah. Right?
Because most leaders that have succeeded have a lot of successes under their belt, but also a lot of failures, right? And so unless you're in business with a hypocrite, like, it'll be okay, right? It's my allergic reaction to mistakes, and I would share this with Gen Zers, employees in general, is lack of ownership. If something's not right and it's everybody else's issue but you, well, you didn't give me the right instructions. I didn't have the full support, and our long-term working relationship probably is not going to be amazing.
Right. If
you're like, listen, I own this project. There's a couple of support areas I'd love to do better, but I need to figure out how to learn from this. Then I'm all about it. Let's figure that out, right? Like, let's work and do that.
And you give the space for us to ask that question and have those meetings.
And give that space. Yeah. And then the other thing that you described, and I think this is across the board, people make this mistake, is they're trying to get a gold star from their manager. So they only show a presentation or a research project or different things at the end. And I think that is just silly.
Yeah.
Right? And I can't think of any other word to do it. If I'm getting an assignment, and I'll use my role now, the company I was co-founded, the recent one, we were just acquired. So I now have a boss, and I report to the CEO of Workplace Options. And so when I'm working on things for my boss, Alan, I'll send him a text message of the 3 or 4 things of how it's going. This is what I'm running into. Do you have any advice on this? This looks good. This looks good. Hey, remember this.
Yeah.
I make him a partner in that bigger project so that by the time I'm bringing it back to him for final sign off, it looks pretty good, right? I know at least I'm getting an 80, an 85, right? Like he may still have some things he wants to see different or didn't like, but he's not surprised. The thing that I would want to teach emerging leaders and Gen Z in particular are the hot buttons of leaders. We don't like surprises. If there's bad news, tell us as fast as you know it. We understand that business is bad news. Things are late, things are broken, all the different things. So no surprises. Second thing, pretty allergic to excuses, but excuses are different than reasons. Reasons why something happened as a learning experience can be overcome. We're in it together, all those different things. And those are some of the things that I wish that we would teach younger professionals early. And the other thing is, how do you have a relationship with bosses and managers and leaders that have different personalities, right? What phrases can you use, different things of that nature. I think we just throw young people into that corporate environment and we haven't really taught them how to manage up. We haven't really taught them that, people are on your team, but people have their own personal reasons how they want to look good at work from time to time, and how to manage some of those politics. I could talk to you all day. And excited about your thoughts. I want to have a couple of rounding questions as we finish our time together. If you had the opportunity to sit with CEOs, sit with business leaders, and give them 2 or 3 tips on how to better lead Gen Z employees, how to better recruit, reward, and retain them, what would you share with us?
I think, firstly, to help bridge that gap, we need to have more conversations. We need to have an open line of communication. Okay. I think people are Gen Z. I don't want to speak on behalf of all of Gen Z because, everybody's different. We're not in that all category, but having that open line of communication and feeling comfortable enough to go up to a leader and say, hey, I want to make sure that we're aligned in our values. I want to make sure that I'm delivering the, products, results, everything that you'd like to see that would make us successful, that drives success in any organization. So that open line of communication is really important. I don't want to make this into a broad category, but I think any type of recognition can be very impactful. And we're not looking for that all the time. We don't need a constant pat on the back. Like, we understand that you are busy. Leaders are busy. So they're not going to have time to pay attention to every little things you do and give you that gold star. We were younger, we would get that, participation medal, whatever it was. And it's like, that's not real life. And we have to understand that and break that, habit that we had formed. Like, I did something, where's my recognition for it, right?
Where's my trophy?
Right. No, it's not life. So I think it's important to, along with communication, if there are any great things that you have noticed, just go ahead and, pull me to the side, pull whoever you're working with to the side, or mention it in a weekly recap email, anything, just give a shout out. And I think seeing that, that kudos, that it can be very reassuring, and it makes you want to work harder because everybody likes that gold star.
That's right.
I think being purpose-driven and really understanding that we want to work. Gen Z wants to work. We want to learn. We're eager to. I think it's important to have those conversations. So communication, but also just trying to align and have those check-ins, have those performance check-ins outside of just checking that box. Really getting to know, me as a person, working on that, outside perspective, or, understanding that we have work-life balances and we're focused on that. And it's not, sometimes it's central, sometimes it's not when it comes to work, but really understanding who we are, as people, as learners, as workers, and really building that team aspect beyond just, I need you to get me this, I
love it.
Yeah.
That open line of communication, that recognition, and that hunger for learning is there, which means as a leader, I have to take those moments to be a teacher, right? Which is different than just the manager. I need you to do these things, right? And so I appreciate all of those points. The one I want to unpack a little bit is recognition is such a powerful thing, and I had to learn this, right? My background growing up, and this is generational, right? Gen X, we didn't get a lot of pats on the back, right? I can really count on my fingers, not just one finger, right? But my fingers, but I'm 54 years old, how many compliments I've gotten from my dad. Like, I remember them. So it was like these were specific moments in time. But we can be better at letting you know where you're on the right track, right? And what I encourage leaders in my coaching practice is that you want to compliment with specificity, because you're also developing trust. Oh, hey, great, you're doing a great job. Well, that means they have to really believe you as a leader. They have to trust in what you're doing, which is different than saying, listen, the email update you brought from the last offsite meeting we had, and then you sent proactively to the team, and then you've been following up on those items, that's been really helpful in keeping the team on track. I really appreciate it. That is much more powerful because you're talking about the very specific thing and that impact. And I think that leaders can do a lot better at that. Your comment on communication and intentionality, right? It's easy for us to assume what we all understand. To have that two-way communication to make sure that the dialogue is landing is something that I think that leaders need to do better, and I continue to work on. That recognition, I think, is awesome. And that teaching piece, I think, is huge. I think we assume what other people know and understand. And I think that assumption is part of what keeps us a little bit distance from ourselves in different things. So my final question for you, right? And then we'll sit back and flip the script and let you ask me a couple questions. If you had a magic wand, there's all kinds of chaos and crazy going on in the world. If you had a magic wand, what's one thing you'd change about our world?
That's a deep question.
It's high octane leadership.
Yeah.
In an empathetic world. All we do is ask big questions.
For sure. I think that there is a lot going on in the world, and it can be very scary to turn on the TV, constantly be upset with the state of the world, and then having to go to work the next day after something big has happened and just still have to work. I think one thing that everybody could apply throughout the generations, people in general, is just to have more empathy for each other.
I don't have anything to add. I think that in a crazy, chaotic world, if we're just a little bit kinder, I think that can help. And you don't know what other people are going through.
Absolutely.
So just giving each other a little space, I think, can go a long way. So I appreciate that answer. So at this point, we're going to flip it.
All right. Let me get my note cards out.
You got your note cards.
All right. What qualities do you see in Gen Z that remind you of your early career?
The curiosity, right? That's one thing I see that's similar to me, right? And that willingness and wanting to learn, and then the impatience. Right? Like, now, what's different, we'll talk about in a minute, but like I didn't want to wait 5 years to move up. I didn't want to wait 10 years to achieve my dreams, but then I wanted the path and was willing to do whatever the work required to get on what some would call a fast track, right? But I think the big thing I would say that's very similar is just that curiosity, that adoption of new tools, that adoption of new ways of thinking. That's where generationally there's some differences. But because I'm an entrepreneur by nature, that creates some of that similarity, right? I'm crazy curious. I'm always looking for what's next. I don't mind things being broken or a little messy, right? Like that's actually where I thrive in terms of seeing things in the future forward. Now, things are a little bit too messy, even for me in the world right now. But in general, I don't mind a little bit of crazy and go from there. But those are a couple things I think are similar.
Yeah, for sure, those are great. And I think that really helps bridge the gap between the generations, because we are similar when it comes to our goals, when it comes to our curiosity. It's important to know that. When have you felt most seen or valued in your own career? And how can we recreate that feeling for future generations?
When have I been most seen or valued? The reason I have to pause on this one is I don't really think about work that way. Now, that doesn't mean as I'm reflecting on it, I'll have an answer. But my initial reaction to that question is, well, who cares about that?
Right.
I revert back to kind of my Gen X piece. But what I will tell you is when I've been the most valued is my time working for my mentor, Grant Willard, and seen and valued, because he really took time, effort, and energy, not just getting me to sell more software in our software business, but teaching me why software businesses worked, what made them more valuable, how to deal with things on a global basis, how to win as a small little independent software company in Raleigh, North Carolina, and support the John Deeres of the world, Lockheed, Raytheon, Boeing, and some of the biggest manufacturing companies in the world. I didn't just learn that out of a book or a school. I had someone that saw my potential and gave me opportunities to win big and fail big.
Yeah.
And so I'm forever grateful for that opportunity and having that kind of mentorship and sponsorship. And I would say that time with Grant still ranks super high in my life in terms of being seen and valued is what the question was.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask that question just because I believe that mentorship transcends through generations. Understanding and seeing how passionate you were about that, and the fact that you had to take a pause and say, well, I don't really think about that. But when you got into it, that is something that was extremely impactful for you. And I think Gen Z as a whole craves that. We look for that. So bridging the gap there.
Bridging the gap. That'll be maybe the title of the thing.
Bridging the gap.
Bridging
I know I've
the
said
gap.
it like 30 times.
Teaching DT how to speak Gen Z.
Yeah, for sure. All right. And then final question. What lessons about leadership have stood the test of time regardless of generation?
Very, very good question. Leadership is relationship. You can't lead people that you don't have a relationship with, right? Because leadership is getting people to do their absolute best, not based on fear, not based on any negative impact, but because they have a shared vision with you. And one of the lost arts in leadership is for leaders to have a dream big enough that other people can see their dreams within my goals and dreams, right? If I have a small dream, then I'm the only one that can win. If I have a big dream, then that means I have to have amazing people on my teams, and their light shining doesn't hurt me in a negative way. I want that. I want to see people recognized. I want to see folks on my team that are 40 under 40, right, at the TBJ. I want to see folks on our team that are recognized in Inc. 5000. I want to see people on our team that are recognized in Fast Company or a writing award, or a best-selling book, or a top 5% podcast. Those things, when you have a dream that's big enough, you can attract the best and brightest because you want them to evolve and grow, right? And whether that is with your organization for 5 years, 10 years, or whether they go off and do their own thing, but look back and say, man, I really appreciate what I learned when we work together and rock together. Yeah. So that, to me, are a couple things that I think that leaders have to continue to do and define. And we have to do that through the chaos, right? Because the current stress of the business environments gets us a little bit more focused on the day-to-day numbers, the bottom line, the cash flow, all the things, right? But as a leader, you have to be able to do both. You have to be able to walk and chew gum. You have to be able to deal with the hardcore economic realities that we face, but also create an environment where psychological safety is real. Doesn't mean that I'm soft on pressure for what I expect. That is, I'm paying you this money, I expect this level.
For sure.
But I also have enough humility to know I might need to change some things. The company might need to alter some things. I might not have the best setup for you to win, so let's talk about that, right? And as long as we take our own levels of accountability, usually with people I can get there. The only folks that I have the most allergic reaction when it's all me, all them, and we're just doing finger pointing, I've never led somebody through arguments. That just usually means we should do something different. Let's do it first class. I get it, right? Everybody's not meant to work together for the next 10 years. But I do think leaders have a strong level of responsibility for the environment they create and what they tolerate and what the expectations are. And it's our job to help stair-step folks along that path the best that we can.
Awesome. Cool. That was my final question.
I have enjoyed chatting with you. I'm proud of you. I am excited for what you're doing. Shout out to Vaco, and I got a lot of great friends at Vaco. So I'm an admirer of the company, right? Because I happen to know folks in their Nashville home office all the way to here in Raleigh and different things. And then very, very excited for what you're learning and developing, and thankful that you were willing to share it on camera. And I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Awesome. Well, I'm appreciative so much to just be able to have this conversation with you. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us on High Octane Leadership with Donald Thompson. Today's episode is a step in our collective journey towards leadership excellence. Remember, every story we share and every insight we gain is a piece in the puzzle of our leadership journey. For more insight and detail, hit the subscribe button so that we can stay connected. For deeper information and more episodes, go to donaldthompson.com. Continue to lead with vision and purpose, and until we meet again, embrace your role as a high-octane leader in the ever-evolving world of business.